I'm Andrew Prag. I'm the Managing Director for Policy at the We Mean Business Coalition. We are a leading international NGO that works with some of the world's most influential businesses to try to drive fast action on climate change. We were founded in the run-up to the Paris Agreement on climate change by 7 leading business organizations at the time who realized that there was really the start of a big wave of corporate voluntary action on climate change, but the voices of those businesses were getting lost because it was a bit disparate and they were talking over each other. So they founded a single coalition to make that voice more impactful and make a difference in policy making.
Can you give us an example of some of the industries that are represented?
Sure, so it ranges from the power sector, some leading utilities like Iberdrola and EDP, through to the consumer goods sectors with Unilever and Nestlé. We have IKEA as a strong partner. Work a lot with Volvo cars in the transport sector. There's a number of businesses out there really pushing to go further and to push governments in that direction.
This doesn't sound like very easy work. How is it going?
These businesses want to lead. Energy transition is a very fast-moving sector, and we find, while the challenge of climate change is huge, there are many bright points in what's happening in energy transition and how businesses are responding. So just look at the rates of change, the rates of growth of solar power. You could say 20 years ago, the world had installed 5 gigawatts of solar power in total. Now we install 5 gigawatts every 4 days. And then you see electrification of vehicles with even the IEA, the International Energy Agency, just based here in Paris, where they're now projecting that even if sales of electric vehicles slow down, we still see a peak in global oil demand in the near future, which is an amazing change of direction for that. We find that it's really important to really encourage businesses to speak up and show governments that they do want to see this change happen.
What are some of the governments that are getting it right?
Here in Europe, there's more of a stronger bent towards regulation and sort of driving companies in that direction, which has been quite effective through the use of carbon pricing, where companies in major emitting sectors are then paying a price for their emissions and able to trade them, which has led to accelerated investment and even innovation in those companies. That's a big difference. But then we see across the Atlantic, United States, a very different approach, but the arrival of the Inflation Reduction Act has made a huge difference. I think nearly now $80 billion has been mobilized in the private sector through the subsidies and tax credits and other incentive schemes. Businesses are wanting to act regardless of what happens with the politics. Major businesses are shifting capital, want to see that return, want to make sure that this business case they've identified as being advantageous stays the course, even if the politics change. Businesses want to keep the direction of travel moving. What we find from the business sector is that national targets gets translated into real policy on the ground, so that they're going to see the difference in the regulation, in the incentives, in the tax credits that may be offered and so on. It's not enough just to put forward a nice target at the UN. You have to go home and turn it into policies. Because these targets that are put forward at the UN, from a CEO's point of view, they may say, well, this is not the actual policy measure, this is not affecting the regulation the countries they operate in.
When it comes to policy, what else do you think is needed to keep the ball rolling?
In high-level terms, we have seen a lot of progress over the last 10 years by companies who have identified that this transition is really a business case for them. It's their future. They see their future competitiveness coming from that. We need to see more of that leadership, but over time we need to see a shift more towards this regulatory environment where everyone is forced to act. We need to essentially have policy that creates the space and the incentives for the leaders to keep leading. But in order for them to really get that competitive advantage, we have to have a regulatory base that brings up the floor for everybody so that we can start achieving the rates of change that we have to see to tackle the climate change problem.
Where do you think we'll be in 5 years? Will there be significant change? Do you anticipate this will be a different world in 5 years where more governments and companies get it?
I remain optimistic that's the direction we're going in, but there still will be a strong need for bringing together businesses to collaborate in ways that they maybe haven't before, to make sure that the messages going to governments are stronger and clearer than ever. It includes how companies go about advocating for policies, how they talk to the governments, and we're starting to see a lot of action now in shining a spotlight on how companies are lobbying. I think there's a lot more we can do in that area. We call it responsible policy engagement, and so I would see an increasing collaboration and activities happening there over the next few years.